writing the equations and creating them. Starting at C9, we get into the arithmetic sequences, writing them recursively and explicitly. And again, you do some of these and you're like, oh, this is just, I don't get it. Yes, you might need to watch it 2-3 times to get it. And it still might not make sense the first time. Do not let that make you quit doing it. You've got to persevere with some of it. Because it is tougher stuff that we're going to be looking at. So, if you would please turn in your notes workbook to C8. Be able to talk about that parent function, which is the absolute value of x. Tells us it goes up, tells us the origin or the vertex is at 0, 0, and the slope is 1 and negative 1. We're going to look at those key features. We're going to be talking about if it's a minimum or a maximum by looking at the equation. Because this one has a minimum at 0, 0, because it always goes above that. That means my range is only going to be above 0. Whereas, so we go back to a lot of domain and range again, okay? So domain and range doesn't leave us. And then predicting what we know. So, if we are going to graph this equation, I'm going to look first then at my vertex. What would you tell me my vertex is going to be as we take a look at that? Yeah. 3.5. Yep. And 0.5 or 1/2, right? Okay. So I'm going to go to 3.5. I'm going to go over to 3, 3.5, and then 1/2 right here in the middle, right? If I'm looking at my slope of this, what do I know, Caden, my slope is going to be?
1.
The slope is going to be 1, and so I'm going to go plus and minus 1. So from this point, I'm going to go up 1 and over 1 here, and up 1 and over 1, right? I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to do the same thing over here, so it's kind of always in the middle. I'm looking at that, right? And I'm going to graph this. And I'm now going to say, hey, what's my domain? What kind of x values could I choose? So my domain for this one is going to be what, Jacob? What would my domain be? What kind of x values can I put in? Domain would be, think about the range for you guys too. What kind of x values can I use? Are we restricted? Can I pick an x way over here like -5? And so everything on that x, we call it all real numbers. Okay? Allie, if we're talking about the range, what's my lowest point for my y?
0.5.
So I'm going to say y has to be greater or equal to 0.5. Okay? Because you're going to be asked those kind of questions as we're looking at our homework. So always thinking, domain, can I put any x value in that equation? Yes. Okay? So, what you are asked to do right now, and I would just like you to go through each one and write your vertex, write your slopes, and then we'll check your graphs. Like this and this, they're pretty much the same thing. So in the video yesterday, I know they did this a lot. On my video in class, we talked about writing it this way. Okay? All right, so what you are doing is writing down your vertex, and then I'm going to have you talk and check with the people by you and see if you agree. When you look at your right slope, right, and so maybe with vertex, if you're not sure, think about even if it goes up or down. So the first one should be going, the V should be going up or down. What would you say? Up or down as we look at it? Down. Second one? Up. Third one? Down. How do I know? The negative in front, right? This is positive, this is negative. So, remember in our general form is y equals, it's our slope, absolute value of x minus h plus k. Always a minus here, always a plus to help us decide. Okay? So as we are looking, Viola, what you have for your vertex of the first one? 1, 3. Vertex of the next one, Riley, what you have? -2, -2. Vertex of the third one, if I am looking at it, Sophia, what do we have? 2.5 and yes, negative 2.5, right? So let's go and put our vertexes at our points. So we're going to go to 1, 3. We're going to go to negative 2, negative 2. We are going to negative 2.5, 0. If I would ask for the domain of all of them, it's every number on the X, that's all reals. The Y's are the ones that get limited, restricted. When you do the marble slide activity, you're going to be restricting the X's, the domain on that, okay? So, we know the slope is negative 2. So, I know this one was going down, so down 2 and over 1, which this is then which slope, my right or left? This would be the right slope, right, down 2 and over 1. So the right slope is negative 2. The left slope is down 2 and over 1. That's a positive slope, right? Make sure you put arrows as we are looking at those, okay? So, please graph your next two as we are looking at those. This next one has a 1/3 slope, so when we start looking at that slope of 1/3, remember, this one is going up, so up 1 and over 3. So here, positive 1/3 and negative 1/3. Up 1 and over 3. Now, sometimes I'll have students say, well, what if I only wanted to go over 1 unit? 1 unit means to go up to 1/3. You only go up 1/3. This would have been 2/3, this would have been, right? So as I go 1 unit to the right, it's telling me to go up 1/3. Up 1 and back 3, okay? And if you haven't done the last one, please do that right now. So we got 0, 2.5, it's right on there. And as we look at our slopes, we would have had on this side it is negative 1, positive 1. If I was asking you for the domain of all of them, the domain is all real numbers. If I asked you for the range, it's different for each one. Larissa, the first range would be y is what?
Y is greater than or equal to 2.
Is it above 3 or below 3?
Below.
Less or equal to 3. And what you are always looking at is the vertex, right? You're looking at the y of the vertex. That's what helps us, okay? So, if I am looking, Sonia, at the next range, my next range should be?
Y equals,
Not just equal, but greater or equal. And what's my vertex y? Vertex y.
Oh,
Negative 2. Okay? If I'm looking at the last one, my range should be, as I'm looking at it, Grace, okay? So practicing those, you got to graph. I think there's 3 in your homework that you're going to do. And then going back to our, just reviewing a little bit, as you are taking a look at the piecewise functions. So when you think of those piecewise functions, you always have 2 pieces of it. One's less than something sometimes, or greater or equal. Each piece must only be in its neighborhood. So if you think of the line, this is going to be my fence. So if you think of your neighbor's fence between your house, you put up that fence, this neighbor that lives over here can only have their equation on that side of the line. This person, the second equation, can only be on this side of the line. Now, when I look at graphing it, might I start at positive 2 and this one keep going and go, oh yeah, it's up here. Yes, but then I have to erase this because I can't go into my neighbor's yard, right? So my graph graph for this one would have been something like, write a nice straight line, but going in that way, right? So x is x plus 2, open circle right here, okay? He does not get to sit on the fence, right? He doesn't get to visit with his neighbor on the fence. He can only go up to it. So when I graph that first one, right? When I look at the second part of this graph, that's this equation, I might have made a table of values because I haven't graphed something like this. This is a quad graph, okay? So if I was graphing this one, I might start with numbers starting at 1 for my x value. And I would have tried to figure out the y. So I plug in a 1 here. 1 minus 1 is 0. So I get 1, 0. Then I might have plugged in a 2 because I don't recognize this as a point slope and it's not linear. So when I'm looking at that, I plug in 2. 2 minus 1 gives me 1. I square it and it's still 1. So I put a point here. I put in a 3. I'm going back to that equation, 3 minus 1, and squaring it. Oh, that's 2 squared. That's 4. That's how they got these points, and then they put an arrow going up, okay? So as we do the piecewise, most of yours are always going to be linear. Notice, linear, linear, okay? None of them are. So the first thing we are always trying to think about on the bottom of page 32 is how many parts, okay? So the first one has 2 parts. Where's the fence at? The fence is at x equals 1. So at x equals 1, put a nice dashed line. It's vertical. Those of you that got that wrong on your test, x equals a number, you try to put it with the signs, it's vertical. Okay? Let's do that for each one. Tell me how many parts. Notice the last one has how many fences, where are the fences? It's got more fences. So the second one, if I was looking at it, how many parts? 2. Where's the fence? If I was looking at that, you would say the fence, Ben, is at
3.
x equals 3. Put it in. X equals 3. We can't cross the fence, right? We're going to have our 2 neighbors that can't go into each other's yards. They do not want their dog going into their yard. That's why they put up a fence, right? They're keeping your dog out. You're keeping their dog out. The next one, as I take a look at it, Allie, how many parts? 3 parts. How many fences? 2 fences. Where is one of the fences located, Kaden?
2.
One is located at x equals 2. Where's the other fence that I'm looking at, Jacob? There's one of them at x equals 2. Where's the other fence? What's the other x that they tell us is a limit? Negative what? Careful. These are my fences back here. X equals negative 1. Right? Is that making sense to everyone? Kind of when you're thinking of these are my regions. Right? So these are all kind of nice, slope intercept. How nice of us for you, okay? So who owns the fence? Who owns it? Who has the equal? So this one would be the second equation, right? The second equation is going to own that fence. And if you're thinking about owning that fence, you might say when y equals negative x, right? So you want to graph each part. Use your slope and y-intercept. This is why that first part of the test was kind of important. So if I'm starting at positive 3, right? This one is for greater than 1. That's for over here, right? I'm still going to start at positive 3 and put a point there. Can I erase it once I put it in? Sure. So I start at 3 and it's a negative 2 slope, down 2 over 1. Down 2 over 1. I'm going to still put those points because that helps me to draw my line. Negative 2 slope. The only thing is, I am going with an open circle here. I'm going down. I don't want to write this part in, right? Because I'm looking at everything greater than 1. Now I'm going to do the lesser equal to 1. Oh, lesser equal to 1. I'm going to change colors for you. That means my y-intercept was 0. and it's a negative x. That means down 1 and over 1. I can't go down 1 and over 1 more because I'd be in my neighbor's yard, right? So I don't want to go into my neighbor's yard. I don't want a dog going over there. In my case, my 3 dogs that I have right now in my life. I have that. Okay, is that making sense as you kind of think of breaking? The slope is 4. No, everywhere far, y is 4. So if y is 4 here and here, this is my horizontal line. This is an open circle. Y is 4. Okay, so the first equation you're graphing, if we look at, is y equals 4. The second equation we're graphing is y is equal to 1/2 x minus 1. Okay, so I'm going to switch some colors. Oh, I have to start at the y-intercept of -1. It's a positive 1/2. Up 1 over 2. Or over 1 up 1/2, right? Over 1 up 1/2. Could I have gone up 1 and over 2 always? Yep. Up 1 over, okay. Who owns the fence? Second equation owns the fence, right? The -1/2 x minus 1. The second equation, because that's where our equal is. That means this is going to be a closed circle, and I'm just going to go here. And I'm going to erase these other points because I really can't be in my neighbor's yard. Okay, is that making sense better? When I think the first time when you're thinking about these, it's always like, oh, this one, the slope is 0. Here, the slope is 1/2. Okay? Try the last one, please, on your own. Who's owning the fence? If we're thinking about it, the first equation owns the fence, and the second equation owns the second fence, right? So if we are looking at who owns the fence, it should be the first and the second, depending. So try it. Do we have a horizontal line again? Right in the middle, y equals 2. With a closed circle here and a closed circle here. So who owns the fence? Actually, not the first, the second owns both fences, right? So if you ever put up a fence in your yard, either you ask your neighbor to help you pay for it or you pay for it. This guy paid for the fence on both sides. His neighbors get the benefit or not, right? So that's what that one looks like. Please try and graph the other two. So first one, y-intercept. Larissa, what do we know?
The y-intercept would be...
Wait. Oh. This one right here. Y equals -2x. What's the y-intercept? 0, 0. That's when we put a point 0, 0. My slope is what? Say -2. So it tells me from this point I should go what? Go
down 2.
That's, I can't be in this neighbor's yard, right? So I can't go down 2 and over 1. So instead I'm going to go up 2 and go back 1, right? So I got this point here, up 2, back 1. Up 2, back 1. And I'm just going to have mine. Now I can't put an open circle here because they share that point. So it's going to look like that. Is that making sense, right? Because we can't be in this neighbor's yard, so we're going to erase our little red self here, okay? Now we're going to go green on the other one. What is my start point, Sonia, on the last one? What's my y-intercept down here as I'm looking? That last one. What's my y-intercept, not my slope? What's my starting point? 3. So I'm going to go up to 3, and I'm going to kind of go, oh yeah, I'm going to just put a little point, but again, I'm going to end up erasing this point because it's in my neighbor's yard. But I am now going to use the slope, which is -1/2. So Grace, because it's a slope of -1/2 from that point, I'm going to do what? How far? Okay, and then what? So,
2.
okay, because rise over run, so down 1 over 2. Well, that's kind of nice. It's right here. Down 1 over 2. Down 1 over 2. Just so you know, that slope of a -1/2 also could have meant as I go over 1, I just go down 1/2. As I go over 1, I go down 1/2. So, And I gotta erase these. So if I drew that in to help me get the line, I now erase it. I do have two negative slopes, right? And as I look at the picture, that's what mine should look like, okay? Questions? Domain, all real numbers, right? If I can choose this number, it'll give me this. What's my range? All real numbers, right? This one has a domain of all real numbers, has a range of all real numbers. This one has a domain of all real numbers, but the range has to be greater than this point right here at a half, right? Because nothing is below that on either of my graphs. This one, if I asked you, what is your domain? Domain, all real numbers. You can choose any x. If you choose something less than 1, you use this equation. If you choose something between -1 and 2, you're going to use this equation. It always equals 2. And if you use something greater than 2, it'll always be over here. All real numbers for the domain. What's the range? All real numbers, because this keeps going all the way down and this one keeps going all the way up. Okay? So domain and range, keep thinking about those. So your assignment, there's graph paper down below and on the next page when you go to turn to the back for the assignment. You can do each graph and think about what we just did on the last page for the pieces. Oh, where's the fence? So you're going to do question number 1, and you might do a graph like this, and then you might do 2 over here, and 3, 4, 5, okay? So you're going to spread them out, don't do one big one, okay? Questions? So that as you look at this, go to the link, fix 1 to 3. So we're on the first fix. Fix it by changing only one number. In number 4, they ask you to write as many equations to write the star. Predict and verify, that's the next part, 1 to 3. Change the equation and verify your prediction. Then you're going to change the brackets, and we're going to talk about that just a little. Use the points. You can use point slope form, slope intercept, absolute value to get your results. So we just saw the first one. I'm going to change one number. I think, you know what? I'm going to change the y-intercept. Someone else might think they're going to change the slope. I want to change the y-intercept, and I want to change it to -4. And I launch it. And it doesn't work, right? So now I get to change something else. So you're changing it to get it to work, right? If you decide, and so then it says, back here, this button will undo the changes. So it puts it back to the original one, okay? So you can undo things up here, okay? This keyboard is going to be super nice to put in brackets, absolute value. And I'll show you how we get to the brackets. The brackets are under the ABC, and they're right here. We're going to use those brackets for our domain, okay? So you should have fixed that one. Then it says, oh, so if you've done that, so make sure after you get yours to work, it does need to work. I need to see a check mark that you got it. Should you have been changing the slope or the y-intercept on that last one? Should have been changing y-intercept, right? You want to keep it at this slant because that's a nice slant. It's parallel. You just got to move it down further. I moved it too far down, right? So the next fix, so this is when I talk about fix 1, 2, 3. Again, it says change only one number. Well, this is a pretty steep graph. That means that's my slope. My y-intercept is at 3. Change one number only. And then try it, right? So you're going to change one of them. I'm not going to do it here, but, okay. The next one, change one number. Look at this part right here. So maybe you want to only change, this is your domain, right? So in fix 3, you might like the slant of the line, and you might like the y-intercept being at 6, okay? And you want to change this. What do we want to change it to? Oh, maybe I want it to go all the way to 12, okay? Obviously, I'm not going to get that last star if I go to 12. So you can change that domain, okay? Then you get to fix 4, and it says type as many equations. Now, notice this one said greater than 0. maybe I want this to stop at where this top star is, which means I want it to go to 7. See how it changed the line to a 7, right? I need another equation. So I go down here and I'm going to type it in. And if you want to put the bracket, it's under the ABC. Okay? So you might start with a y equals, and maybe you're going to think point slope form or slope intercept, right? You're going to go, oh, you know, if I look, maybe I want the same slope, but a different. Okay, so you're going to play around with this. Is that making sense? Question is it you're going to predict. So they give you this equation down here, and it says predict if we change negative 0.14 to a 2 in the equation, what happens to your graph? So you can't actually change anything, right? So you're going to just explain what you think happens. And then the next screen, you're going to actually make that change from the 0.14 to the positive 2, okay? So you're going to keep going as you are doing this, okay?